we're doing a series of Sid and Marty Croft show episodes. Why not talk about like the granddaddy of them all? Sort of the first was H.R. Pufnstuf.
Huge.
Like I really believed in the reality of H.R. Pufnstuf, watching it in like the early 80s as a little kid, and then when I was a little older, I was like, whoa, Pufnstuf. That's kind of the thing that set Pufnstuf apart from like the rest of the Sid and Marty Croft shows is shot on film. So it kind of has like a little more, like it has a little more of like a nice texture to it. When you talk to Sid and Marty Croft, this is Sid Croft's favorite show that they made. It was their first one, and Sid Croft like loved Wizard of Oz. When he was a kid, he saw Wizard of Oz and said like, I want to go in show business. I want to be a part of this thing. And H.R. Pufnstuf was kind of the closest they got to actually making a Wizard of Oz. It's kind of this little boy Jimmy who gets on this boat that takes him to a magical land where he's stranded, and there's an evil witchy Pooh, and he's got his magic flute. And there's even, in the first episode, there's even kind of like a yellow brick road that he can take to get him home, and then the witch destroys it. But it's got that feel. It's got talking trees. And,
love that. And like Pufnstuf adjacent, like Puff Magic Dragon.
Yeah, because Puff the Magic Dragon predated that, and Pufnstuf, again, they're kind of like Sid and Marty Croft, and maybe some of the criticism of them and some of the things that maybe made them get like less respect is they were sort of like magpies. They would just kind of be like, okay, what's hot, what's cool, and we'll take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's reductive to say they were just, purely derivative. Like I think there's imagination and originality coming into
you wouldn't say that they're like the canon films of children's shows,
right? Part of like the survival mechanism for getting something on the air, on like network television, you'd have to, make sure it
ripped from the headlines.
Yeah,
kind
exactly.
Of,
So yeah, Puff the Magic Dragon was an influence, and they were going for, it's like late 60s. They were going for like a psychedelic.
They nailed it.
Yeah, for sure. And more, so you see that amplify like throughout their series. But like looking at H.R. Pufnstuf, it's like they were swinging for the fences in a way that I don't see on the other shows, with maybe a couple exceptions. But and I think maybe they might, I don't know if they like lost their shirt on it or something. Like I know it was a big hit, but I feel like subsequent things are like, okay, we're not going to go all, because when you look at those sets, there's so much texture. There's all kinds of detail everywhere. There's like a talking door.
Looks more expensive.
Yeah, it looks very expensive. There's all these little bits and pieces. Like it's just everywhere you look, it's so beautiful and well, lush. Lush and well crafted. And again, the film stock and everything. And you like when you look at the floors and the walls in Lidsville, like it feels very much more like you're on a set. Like you just kind of see this like the flat like airplane hangar floor, and then this like flat blue painted on the like Lidsville feels very claustrophobic. Where H.R. Pufnstuf, even though it's probably filmed, might even be filmed in the same building or whatever, it feels more expansive.
It definitely does, and like I was scared of Witchy Poo.
Yeah, and as a kid, I mean, I was
even as
maybe
an adult,
I was maybe 2 or something. So like, yeah, Witchy Poo. I've had some Witchy Poo nightmares.
I believe it.
I mean, the villains are so great in these shows. Like the villains are the stars of these shows, and Witchy Poo is just great.
And we got to get to Charles Nelson Riley in Lidsville. Like
now, Witchy Poo. Billy Hayes is Witchy Poo, and they've used her a few other times. She was Weenie the Genie, and just great. Like really, just really sells that, especially like you're one of the few like humans acting against like puppets or people in like mascot suits,
I'm a big fan of the mascots, so like it's great. It's like mascots' finest hour, like in these shows.
Yeah, Pufnstuf, like it looks like it's got like 2 people or something, like to keep that mouth going.
And
he does the Kermit thing, which I guess is easy to do with like when you're when you're puppeteering to make his like mouth kind of like invert. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of H.R. Pufnstuf.
Yeah.
But right now, going down the list, Far Out Space Nuts right now is it's winning. My like
that's been a pleasant surprise. Like Pufnstuf is like the crown jewel, and it's kind of a shame that so early they kind of struck gold, and it was hard. There's a couple other contenders. Like I like Far Out Space Nuts a lot. I'd probably put maybe Land of the Lost. Land of the Lost is very ambitious, and Land of the Lost is probably like Pufnstuf and Land of the Lost are like the 2 most successful, because and Land of the Lost had a pretty good shelf life. Because like
Yeah.
I remember seeing that on Saturday mornings, you know, deep into the 80s.
Oh.
You know, and then they brought it, you know.
When
they
I was
brought
a
it back.
kid, I was obsessed with that, like,
The reboot
of Land of the Lost.
Yeah, but the original like kept running. And I mean, when I'm asked like, oh, what's my favorite TV show of all time? Very often the answer is Land of the Lost. So, but yeah, Pufnstuf. There's like a magical quality to it. It's so great. And again, it's just one season. Like it would be nice if there was more. Like there was one season, and then they did a movie, and then I don't remember the exact story of why they didn't do a second season. I don't know if it was like one of those things where. Like Batman, where they didn't do like the fourth season or whatever, you know, because like somebody destroyed the sets by accident or something, you know, like I don't know if it was one of those, but I feel like there was supposed to be a second season and they didn't do it, but they did the movie and then they kind of just moved on to the next thing. But like Pufnstuf, it feels like that could have run a long time. Like they were just kind of scratching. All of these things have like a premise where like the kid is trying to get home. Jack Wilde's trying to get home. And it would have been nice to have an episode where he gets home, you know, or like a made-for-TV movie in the 80s, like around the time when they'd have the return of the $6 Million Man, like have
or
the
Brady
of
Bunch.
Yeah, but all those Brady Bunch reunions, I would have loved. But again, it's like, I guess that's part of growing up. It's on you, like, you know, your favorite childhood show that didn't have an ending. Maybe you could just sit down and write. Like, how hard would it be to write an ending where, like, where Jimmy and his magic flute get back?
1988. It's like NBC Sunday Night at the Movies, the return of Pufnstuf. Then it starts playing like the music.
I saw it as like just a small kid, preschool age and stuff. Then didn't see it for years and years, and it wasn't until like maybe the 90s where I saw it again for the first time and like was just crushed with how cheesy it was. I had it so built up in my head. And just even the intro, HR, Pufnstuf, like he's just like kind of running down a hill in slow motion, you know, like the $6 Million Man or something. Like nothing's happening for like these long stretches. And then he gets on this boat, this beautiful boat. And like as a kid, that beautiful boat was so wondrous to me. And then when the boat turns evil, it's like so scary, you know, and you watch it now and it's just like so bad. It's like day for night and stuff. But like as a kid, like I just ate it all up. Like I was scared of that evil boat and stuff. And I guess I still don't know quite what. I think they explore it more in the movie. I'll have to check out the movie. Was that boat that he takes to the living island? Was that like a nice boat and he gets on it and it's this nice little voyage and then Witchy Poo turns it evil and it's evil, or was it a trap the whole time? Like was it this evil boat disguised as a nice boat and then Witchy Poo drops it? Again, these things like they're just embedded deep in my psyche. That HR Pufnstuf is like the living island. It's this like far, you know, it's this mystic faraway place. It's called the Living Island, and so everything was alive. It was talking trees. Like everything had a personality. You know, even the clouds and stuff. Jack Wilde playing Jimmy. Freddie the flute, the only living flute. And my recollection, and maybe this is how it is in the movie or something, but my recollection was that he had a flute that was just like a regular flute, and then when he came to the Living Island, it came to life. But the first episode seems to imply that Freddie the flute was always alive. You know, maybe it was. Maybe it's like the gatekeeper. In the hero's journey, like maybe he gets this magical flute, and then that's kind of pointing the way towards this magical land.
Tom, there's some unresolved. We have to like put a boat. We have to like do like the Total Recall HR Pufnstuf finale.
I would love to work on this stuff. I know there's been attempts at revivals. Like somebody was working on like an animated revival of HR Pufnstuf.
Oh wow!
Like talking about like, oh, you know, how much of this stuff is drug references and stuff. There's a Mr. Show episode that I think is called like Drug and Stuff or something. And like where they do an HR Pufnstuf thing. And instead of Freddie the flute, it's like Billy the bong. It's like a bong that talks with a little face on it. HR Pufnstuf, there's no ending to it. It's completely unresolved. Jimmy is just kind of, stuck in this like fantasy world and never comes out.
I gotta watch that Mr. Show episode.
Yeah.
HR drug and stuff.
Yeah. I also wondered as a kid, I can't remember, like there was some kind of theory that like an older kid told me about why the protagonists of these Sid and Marty Krofft shows were always British. Like I couldn't but it was like a kid explain. It wasn't just as simple as like, oh well, the Beatles were big, the British invasion, so we're gonna have like the kid version.
That was on my mind, but I was just like,
we're gonna have the kid version of the British invasion, and we can talk more about sort of like the British invasion when we get to the Bugaloos. I fast forward to the final episodes of these, just in some hope that there's some hint of an ending, and it seems like a lot of them. The last episode is like a clips episode where they show like the greatest hits from the series. So maybe part of the reason these things only went one season is they were fresh out of ideas. Like they were up shit's creek. It's like, we've done every Pufnstuf kind of thing you can do, and we are toast. We need to move on to the next thing.
Got the DVD somewhere. I might have to like bust them out.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, like this is all possible because I just, when I was on Tubi, and so like, wait a second, most of them
we love Tubi.
Now, Pufnstuf doesn't have an ending. Bugaloos doesn't have an ending. The Lost Saucer, Lidsville, like we never see Butch Patrick get back out of that hat or whatever. Land of the Lost does have an ending because they were pretty smart. Again, looking at the arc of Sid and Marty Krofft, they'd done a bunch of these shows, and I guess at some point they figured like, it's kind of weird. You do these stories. These are stories for kids, and you never give them an ending. You never give like. Wouldn't it be nice to give the kids an ending? Land of the Lost, what they did, it was ingenious. The final episode of season 1 of Land of the Lost, and again, they didn't know if it was going to go more seasons. Most of their shows didn't. Most of their shows only went one season. The final episode of Land of the Lost, also for like syndicated shows, you can't make any kind of order to your shows because they have to be able to play in whatever order they want. So like, you can't have a final episode because what if you show your final episode and then next week, like what's that? So the solution they came up with was they have this episode of Land of the Lost where they escape from the Land of the Lost, but it's like a time loop. So in order for them to escape the Land of the Lost, they had like the version of them that entered this time warp to get there at the beginning of the show, in the opening credits of the first episode, they have to do this energy exchange where they leave and then those ones come in. So it's like this perfect loop. It ends where it begins. So they do escape and they're free and they get to live out the rest of their lives. And then the Marshall, Will, and Holly from the first episode, they come in. So then when you watch next week's episode, you're watching that loop. So it's like ingenious.
That's so smart.
You do get closure. You could view that as like the final episode of the whole series, or you can view it as this loop and then continue keep going with it. So
I love that. That's so sick.
Every just another example of how great that show was. But every one of these shows deserves something along those lines, some kind of jumping off point, to give us closure. Because again, this is stuff like from the time I was like 2 or 3 years old. Yeah, I've been wanting some kind of closure with this stuff.
No, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And again, like I'm a writer now. Like I'm a creative person, so if I want to set aside the time, I could come up with an ending just to kind of give myself that closure.
If you get that ending, I gotta check it out.
Yeah, maybe we could do like a little animated thing. That could be a thing for the Total Recall show. Do like a little animated thing of like the endings to all these Sid and Marty Krofft shows that I was obsessed with as a kid.
Dude, that's a great idea.
So yeah, coming soon.